Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the IWillAim podcast. And our topic for today is strategy. I have a special guest, Kavita Joseph. Let me tell you something about Kavita. Kavita has around 25 years of experience helping organizations navigate change initiative across multiple continents, being high-performing teams in complex matrix organization and driving tangible business benefit through strong execution. When she's not immersed in executing strategy, you can find her enjoying the great outdoors and traveling to experience new culture and broaden her perspective. Welcome, Kabira.
Thank you so much, Will. And hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be on this podcast sharing some of my learnings. And congratulations, Will, on your successful podcast. I know you've hit like 50 plus at this point in time, right?
Yes.
And also on your company, Kairos, focusing on executive coaching and leadership development. I have absolutely no doubt that you'll help new and current leaders evolve and bank on their strengths, so congratulations.
Thank you for the well wishes. Really appreciate it. I just one topic that I had on my list and have know you're the expert in it, so I'm really looking forward to it. Let's start with the first question. I always want to ground our audience around who you are, and can you share a little bit about your journey?
Sure, yeah. So I started my career in India working for a CRM product and services company, but based out of Kirkland, Washington, where I supported the pre-sales and the marketing teams. Now, right off the door, that role sensitized me to the criticality of strategy, which was really driven by market positioning and customer perception. It also exposed me to the disconnect between, sales, product, and operations. Now, a lot of times, we notice a gap between what the customer expects, right, from a company or a product versus what the product and the ops team had off the shelf. So this company had some similar disconnects, and one of the things that they were really, really excellent at was to quickly iterate, upgrade, and make sure that they were ready to support, that product that the customer wanted. It was a great learning, right, in understanding what the market wants and how important it is for a company to quickly, align what it produces and provides, to meet that need. And then, I moved to the US. I worked for a Swiss wealth manager and broker dealer. It was a totally new industry. That company was growing, in the US through multiple acquisitions and mergers. That was a great experience again, because I worked on the integration team, where a lot of our strategy and plans were built and driven by market and customer research. I learned at that point in time how a customer's success as an industry leader is really determined by the market. So positioning and backing that by capability that the customers really wanted was critical. After that, the next decade and a half, was really through the economic downturn and the COVID pandemic, where banks became highly capitalized but less profitable. There were stricter financial regulations, especially the Dodd-Frank Act, which most of us remember, right? That increased compliance costs for the company. And then the high interest rate environment, which added further to cost pressures, lower consumer spending, etc. So operating cost optimization became a key theme for a lot of these companies. At this juncture, I kind of switched lanes a little, and I led efficiency programs focused on setting up global shared services, bringing in the vendor model into companies, balancing location strategies, and then also, driving application rationalization, infrastructure optimization, and some digital programs. Now, a lot of where I focus and bring value is driven by where the industry is headed. So it's been an extremely interesting career journey that's required rapid learning and quick delivering. And my work has always aligned with and contributed to the strategic intent of my companies.
Wow, thank you for sharing a very broad and elaborate experience. Thank you for sharing that. Now we're going to go to the next segment. Every episode I do a shout out. And for this episode, I want to shout out to my youngest daughter, Maddie Lukang. Our is really amazing. Over the summer, she was interning, going to the gym in the morning, working out, practicing soccer, getting ready for the season. And she did that all summer long. So I was really proud of her. I actually went back to school that we had our first dinner visiting her. And I told her, I said, how proud I am that she had that discipline and she carried it out through summer. while interning, going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, coming home, going to the field practicing or playing pickup games. It's really amazing to see her do that, put in the work. So who do you want to shout out to?
I have to say, congratulations, Maddie. Like, I've seen her progress through the years, and she has been truly remarkable. So, yay, Maddie. Congratulations and good job. From my side, I've had a community of really, really strong, a strong support system, right? So I'd really love to use this opportunity to give a shout out to my family and also to my coaches and mentors. Bill, you've been my mentor for over 17 years now. You've constantly kept in touch. I've called you, I still remember that phone call at 11 p.m. in the night when I needed some guidance. You've been amazing. And then I also want to give a shout out and recognize Mark Lopez, who has been an incredible colleague and coach for over 10 years. A lot of my career moves have happened because, someone had faith in me. Mark is one such coach and, I'd say advocate for me. And Jennifer Edelhart, who's not only my friend, but she's also my mentor, my cheerleader, an intellectual yin to my yang for over 17 years. So, folks, this podcast is dedicated to you, and thank you for investing in me.
Thank you for the kind words. I think you're one of my mentee that has been with me for a long time. In fact, I was telling some of the folks that I interviewed on my other episode that when I did a shout out on one of the episodes, I did mention that you started as a mentee and now you're a friend, right? To me, that's the way I look at it. And I thank you for the opportunity I'm blessed to be able to actually work with you over the years. Can you share a memorable success story where your strategic approach made a significant impact on an organization?
I've always been a big picture person, right? I've always, never focused on the task at hand. It's important to understand what's the bigger picture, outcome or impact that a piece of work delivers. So, as someone who executes strategic initiatives, it is very important to have a clear line of sight into what the organization is trying to achieve outside in the marketplace. And then you have to translate it into what your team needs to do or what your org needs from you as contribution. So one example is, in order to continue to provide the best financial returns to their beneficiaries despite the pressures of an extended high interest rate environment, one of my organizations formulated a strategy to optimize general operating expenses. Now, this included a new operating model driven by location strategy, where a number of technology and operations services would be delivered out of India. So again, the largest strategy was, optimize general operating expenses, and the way it would be delivered is through redefining the operating model. There was a new target state. Now, at the onset, given the India model, this was a controversial program and we had some resistance. But again, being able to provide the context on outcomes for our clients and the outcomes, the positive outcomes expected to the financial health of the company, building trust and credibility through effective delivery and handling of change, and bringing teams along as partners and owners, right? So doing this with them as opposed to doing this to them, right, helped us set up the India Business Services Center for this company as a strategic location, which now provides innovation, talent, the ability to scale. More importantly, it's not just a innovation center. It also helped the company hit its revenue expense targets. I still, when I look back on all of the work I did, and I've worked on some really, really cool programs, this one stands out because of the scale of change, right? How we brought the culture along, how we brought the team along, and how the strategy had to be communicated through effective change management, and how, the company actually not just adapted, but also adopted, this new operating model. It still stands out as one of my favorite programs and one of the ones that I count as my legacy, because when you go to India, you see a large company there, right, which didn't exist here. So definitely very proud of that one outcome.
Well, first of all, congratulations, right? I think that's
Thank you.
that's an amazing experience. An amazing feeling too that you created something when there was not there before. But you started with you understand the big picture and understand how you could actually help to make that happen. And then I love the fact that you talk about doing with them, not to them, because that's extremely important, right? A lot of times, organizational change end up being doing something to them, but not with them. And I love the fact that you also talk about bringing them along, bringing them along in the journey, and help your team accomplish what it needs. Thank you for explaining that. Next, I want to go to the next question. It's more thinking about the misconception, right? What are some of the common misconception people have around strategy, and how do you address them in your work?
Yeah, look, when we kick off a strategic initiative, when you're in the middle of executing it, there are a lot of words thrown around, right? There's like, the goals, there are plans,
Hmm.
there's strategy, there's outcomes, there's benefits. What we have to be very clear about is that your goals, your plans are not strategy. Strategy feeds into, your goals and plans. To me, strategy is holistic, right?
Hmm.
It's really, how the company will position itself to differentiate itself in the marketplace and create competitive advantage, right? No company wants to do something that, 10 other peers are doing at the same level, right? So it's really about how we deliver unique value and outperform our competitors. It's that unique positioning, right? You either produce the, best product faster, cheaper, better, or you provide an unmatched service that no one else is providing. And in order to do this, you need to think not just about the company, but also its whole competitive environment as a whole. And people tend to forget that because we get very myopic and focus on the plan or the task or, whatever it is within our little silo. For me, it's always that external perspective first, and then you translate that into an internal plan, and then you take that plan across your different business units, geographies, functions, down to the teams. What this also means is that everyone in the company or whoever's involved in the project needs to understand the overarching strategy. I make sure that this is understood and reiterated. For me, in most of my large programs, one of the most critical functions is the organizational change management stream, right? Because they understand what the strategy is and how it impacts and how to communicate that, how to reiterate that, how to bring back feedback, from champions or, people that are not champions of your project and then build that back into, how you communicate and bring people along. So, again, strategy is that big picture view of how the company wants to position itself and outperform its competitors. And then you have to build your plans and you build out your plans which really contribute towards that strategy.
I like the way you point out that having everyone in the organization understand the overarching objective and why you're doing it, and the way the strategy is feeding to your objective and goals. Because sometimes people get confused. They focus on objective and goals and they think strategy is it's just something that comes with it. But really, the feeding of the strategy and understanding what are the outcome that you want to achieve, and also, like you mentioned, one of the things that's really important is competitive advantage that you're creating because of it. Thank you for highlighting those. In today's rapid changing business landscape, how do you stay ahead of the trend and adapt your strategies accordingly? Because that's one of the key challenge, right? Dynamic business changes.
Change is hard, right? Change is hard. So there is a Jack Welch quote that I really like. And he says that if the gap between the rate of change externally is bigger than the rate of change internally, the end is near, right? Organizations need to be able to adjust internal alignment and your internal plans quickly to respond to external changes, but with clarity, right? And your strategy should provide that clarity. It's important to ask the question, has the strategy changed, right? Anytime there is a change to your plan, ask the question, has the strategy changed? And if the answer is yes, then it requires a pivot and change. Now, constant change and renewal is not about being unfocused. It is essential in today's world, right? It is not unfocused. It is shifting focus from one state to a new state, but with clarity in response to external change. And this is where culture comes in, right? A culture of agility, a culture of innovation, a culture of continuous learning. So again, I think we should all be very comfortable with being uncomfortable. I've been in a lot of organizations where people really don't like change because people like some predictability in their everyday, right? But again, it's important to understand that external change creates internal change. And the closer we are aligned internally to what's changing externally, the more successful we will be as an organization. And again, that won't come easy. Your culture has to be the right culture to support, that quick pivot.
Your point on the clarity, right? I think the clarity is super important. It's extremely important for everyone to understand what's going on. And I love the comparison of if the rate of change outside is much more than the rate of change inside, that it marks the end of the organization. And the last part that you mentioned, that if something changed, you need to ask what changed in our strategy. I think that's something that our audience need to think about is when change happened, does that affect our strategy? Then we need to pivot. As you mentioned, how do you pivot? What do you do next? This question I have for you, could you walk us through a process of developing a strategic plan, an initial analysis and implementation and evaluation? Maybe a high level, maybe not giving the
Yeah,
secret sauce that you have.
right. Because this sausage making, we can go on for days, right, about
Yeah.
how this is done. But again, the first step is always to review your strategy or your strategic position, right? That's your strategic intent for the organization as a whole. And then from there, every organization sets its objectives and then priorities, because you could have 10 objectives. But what's important, because there's a lot of resource, that you have to assign, right? And one of the things is there's always opportunity cost, right? So priorities are very important. From there, you develop your plan. Again, to a large extent, this plan has to be a holistic plan that goes across, your geographies, different functions, etc. Again, the one thing I'll highlight here in the plan section is always remember that, when you plan, there is a very important cross-functional planning aspect as well, because no one function or a group within any company can deliver the required outcomes by themselves. There are always dependencies and risks to be managed, right? So you want to make sure that you have that cross-functional plan. And my favorite thing to do is to always scaffold your plan with a really robust program management, structure, and also a change management strategy and plan around it, because that is really going to help you as you navigate through the execution and eventually through your adoption. And once you've executed and delivered, there is this really important step of review, right? Have you met your intended goals? Are your customers happy with it? And if the answer is yes, then you've done a fabulous job. If the answer is to some extent, then you want to address those gaps as well. So a lot of programs I've noticed end at the execution and the delivery phase, but then this whole review, adapt, see if you've hit your business goals and benefits, right? There's anyone who's executed a plan knows that there are key OKRs and KPIs and important metrics that we use. So that kind of, is another horizontal that runs across, the life cycle of the program. But again, to kind of reiterate, review your strategic intent and positioning, set objectives and priorities, develop your plan. Don't forget your change management plan and your cross-functional plan. Execute and manage, and then review and adapt.
I love that you simplify it to a 5-step approach, right? Review, set objective, develop, execute. And the last part is extremely important. Like any change, there's feedback loop, adjustment to be made. So thank you for highlighting the part in which we need to review, we need to adapt, we need to get the feedback. I think I'm going to ask that one of the question that I always ask people on leadership. What's the role of a leadership plays in a culture and effective strategy execution?
So, quick definition for culture. Culture is an organization's values, beliefs,
Mm,
behaviors, and attitudes. And Peter Drucker famously says culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
yes.
For strategy to succeed, it should be compatible with and supported by existing culture. Culture is extremely deeply ingrained, in an organization, and culture is resistant to change. That's the base premise, right? When you walk into, executing change, you have to remember that you can expect some resistance. If you don't see it up front, you'll see it at some point. right? So planning for managing culture and having the right leadership strategy to manage that culture around a change initiative is important. Other thing to remember is that it's harder to shift culture than to change strategy. So what are you going to do? Are you going to change the strategy, or are you going to make sure that your culture is malleable and agile enough, to support your strategy, right? Because like we just spoke, strategy will keep changing based on your external market requirements. There's a lot of things, leaders can do, but I'll just highlight two. One is your leadership team should model behaviors and values aligned with strategy, right? So your leadership really should be modeling it. And then second, which is really important, especially, from my personal experience, is a leader should build a culture of trust, transparency, and accountability. Leaders carry, the baton here, right? In terms of modeling behavior and making sure there's enough transparency around why we are executing this change and what the benefits are. When that is effectively done, it's really pretty straightforward when it comes to, influencing the right behaviors and reaction from the team.
I think excellent point on leader modeling, right? They need to be they need to buy in first. They need to be the first one in the bus, sitting in the right place in the bus, and then that's the only way they could guide other people. Looking ahead, I want to look at, are there any emerging trends or challenges that you foresee that would affect the field of strategy, and how might an organization adapt and adjust accordingly?
I'm going to draw from a lot of what, I've shared so far. The market's always changing. And for now, we are seeing rapid changes due to technology, right? Is the biggest thing out there. And a lot of companies are turning into AI companies, or they're turning into AI, driven, companies, right? Whether it be in their product or their services or in their support of what they produce. Technology changes are primary, and it's moving faster than companies can keep up, and the larger the company, the harder it is for you to move and react. The second is consumer behavior, right? Customers want personalized experiences. They want everything digital. They want omni-channel, availability of whatever they buy. So these are the two large ones that are more for sure, right? But the thing to remember is that change can be complex. And it's very important for leaders to simplify that complex world for their people, because complexity creates confusion. Confusion creates inconsistency, and inconsistency creates failure. So at the top of, what a company or what leaders can do to keep up with rapidly changing trends is to absolutely have a well-articulated strategy, because that strategy will then drive the plan aligned with that strategy, and then you build the right organizational culture around it.
Well, thank you for sharing how might a company adapt to the current changes. Today we talk about strategy on a high level. We also did a drill down on how might one organization apply the steps in doing strategy, and we kind of talk about what does a leader play a role in implementing a good strategy. And last but not the least, we talk about how do you prepare for the future. If there's three takeaway from today's episode, what are the three takeaway you want our audience to remember?
Sure. So three things, right? Strategy is holistic. Always think big picture and outside of the organization. There's another saying that I read which says that, the success or failure of a company is really determined outside, right? It's on your positioning, it's on your perception, etc. So strategy is that external, view of how a company wants to position itself as being unique.
Mm.
And in order to, beat competition, to be the best, it's always about being, number one or having the best service. So it's that whole unique positioning. So strategy, just think outside of your organization. The second is that a well-articulated strategy simplifies complexity. So it's really important. A lot of these large initiatives we work on are complex. So having a clear strategy drives simplified, execution, and also drives the right culture and outcomes. The third point is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's very important. So these are the three things I would say, Will, first to keep in mind. Strategy is holistic. A well-articulated strategy removes, complexity and failure, and culture is extremely important for you to be able to drive the right strategy and outcomes.
Well, thank you for sharing the three takeaway. Now I want you to give you a chance to let my audience know how to reach out or engage you. If maybe they want to invite you to speak at their event, how do they reach out to you?
I am very active on and present on LinkedIn, so that would be the best avenue to reach out to me. And when you post this podcast, we could add a link to my LinkedIn page. I really look forward to hearing from all of you and carrying this conversation further.
Thank you. I really want to thank you, Kavita, for your time today. I know it's Saturday and we're doing a recording. Really appreciate you
Just
coming to my episode and sharing knowledge on strategy. I think my audience would really learn a lot from it and wishing you continued success in your journey.
thank you very much for the opportunity, Will. Good luck.